Wildfires are spreading in the Balkans as temperatures rise. Bulgaria's prime minister called on citizens to be extremely careful, and the state declared red code for heat waves. Wildfires covered huge areas in south and southwest Bulgaria. Prime Minister Dimitar Glavchev visited the site of a burnt house in the region of Stara Zagora, speaking to locals and volunteers who helped to fight the fire.
Овладяна е ситуацията, тук предстои и тук да бъде овладян. Обърнали сме се за помощ и към съседни по механизма, по който може да получим такава помощ. Имаме уверение от Чехия, от Румъния, казват, че имат готовност.
There are also 10 active fires in North Macedonia. The most spread one is in the region of Stip and Negotino at the Serta mountain. There are about 700 to 800 hectares of pine forest, and the fire is still not under control. The government of North Macedonia asked from the European Union to activate the mechanism of the civil protection, and following its affirmative response, air tractors and helicopters arrived from Turkey, Montenegro, Serbia and Slovenia and were deployed in the fire zones. Judges of a European Union-backed court convicted the former Kosovo Liberation Army member Peter Shala guilty of murder, torture and arbitrary detention.
The panel finds beyond reasonable doubt that Mr. Shala is guilty.
Nicknamed Wolf, Shala is sentenced for being involved in the murder of one person and illegal detention and torture of nearly 20 individuals during his country's war for independence from Serbia in 1999. In total, Shala is found guilty of 3 war crimes by the Kosovo Specialist Chambers, a court that is part of the Kosovo legal system but based in the Netherlands. He will spend 18 years in prison. 60-year-old war criminal was arrested in Belgium on March 16, 2021 and transferred to the court on April 15, 2021.
The panel sentenced you to a single sentence of 18 years of imprisonment with credit for the time served.
Brits at home are listening intently to their new government, hearing a Labour leader looking to rejuvenate and rebuild relations with Europe.
We think we can get a better deal than the botched deal that Boris Johnson brought home, and we will work on that, understanding the work that needs to be done and the nature of the challenge.
The largest proportion of Europeans living in London are young adults. There's cautious hope regarding Keir Starmer's approach to the current challenges. Many are eager to see the reinstatement of freedom of movement.
Yeah, I'm slightly more optimistic than I would be with the Tories.
There are so many pros and cons about it, but first thing that we felt was relief.
I feel the fact that we are divided in a certain sense. In the past it's really different because obviously we are all together, and so now in a certain sense I feel that it's like something apart.
When it comes to politics in Britain, it's been a long few years and Brexit has posed many challenges, but with Labour now in power, the UK hopes to reset its relationship with Europe. Will this approach lead to better engagement and improved trade ties?
There is this very positive mood music.
Professor Jonathan Portas is a leading expert in UK and EU relations.
If there are early positive agreements, you could see that generating a dynamic, a political and economic dynamic where there's pressure on both sides to go further and faster, and you could actually see very real change. But at the moment, I think we genuinely don't know. And it will also depend, frankly, on wider geopolitical pressures and considerations.
Only time will tell if Labour's efforts will lead to stronger ties between the UK and Europe. But with much hanging in the balance, a lot will depend on the outcome of the American presidential election. Luke Hanrahan, Euronews, London.
The European Commission has launched a boycott of the Hungarian presidency of the EU Council. No commissioners will attend informal meetings in Hungary in July and will instead be replaced by officials. Viktor Orban made controversial surprise visits to Moscow, Beijing and Mar-a-Lago to supposedly negotiate a ceasefire in Ukraine. Brussels took a dim view of the self-proclaimed peace mission of the Hungarian Prime Minister. It denounces an abuse of the presidency of the EU Council and a violation of the bloc's treaties. Some MEPs want to go even further. In a letter to the presidents of the Council, Commission and European Parliament, 63 MEPs called for the activation of Article 7 to suspend Hungary's right to vote.
We wrote a letter to send a very clear message to Viktor Orban that he has no mandate to act on behalf of the European Union by talking to Putin and Xi Jinping. He's justifying the Russian aggression in Ukraine with that, and that is absolutely not okay.
Hungary has hit back against the campaign.
This is a political campaign which is unacceptable because the Commission has to play a role which is an honest and friendly cooperation among the European institutions. And what we see now, and this is an evidence of that, that they are actually misusing for political rounds the European institutions.
The Baltic states, Poland, Sweden and Finland's ministers will be replaced by civil servants at the Councils of Ministers organised in Hungary in July. Other member states may follow in their steps.
French soldiers have arrived in Paris to provide security for the Olympic Games, with some of them having just completed a mission in Mali or Afghanistan. Their latest mission, though, will be rather different.
Nous, notre mission, ça va être de sécuriser les lieux des Jeux Olympiques et Paralympiques. Donc c'est la mission Sentinelle, une mission qu'on connaît très bien et pour laquelle on est formé, réserviste au même titre que militaire d'active.
The military camp, named after late Olympian Corporal Alain Moumont, is strategically located for operations across Paris. It can accommodate 4,500 soldiers. They'll be housed in chalets on stilts with 15 people per dormitory.
Rentrer dans le bâtiment, on va prendre possession de notre logement pour les 2 mois et demi.
The military base has an infirmary, sanitary facilities and a refectory, all of which were erected in just 65 days.
J'ai 40 ans d'armée derrière moi, c'est la première fois que je vois ce type de réalisation. Depuis la Seconde Guerre mondiale, c'est le plus gros camp qui est réalisé sur Paris.
Far-right candidates bidding to become Vice President of the European Parliament were voted down on Tuesday as part of centrist parties' coordinated efforts to build a firewall against the radical right wing. While the European Conservatives and Reformists did manage to secure 2 vice presidents, the 2 newly formed radical right-wing groupings were blocked. It means neither Patriots for Europe nor the Europe of Sovereign Nations will be represented in the European Parliament's Bureau.
The European Border and Coast Guard Agency.
Parties and political groups that basically want to destroy this parliament, that want to weaken the European Union and that ran on platforms abolishing the EU, leaving the EU, whatever, should not hold responsibility in the European Union, should not hold responsibility here in the European Parliament. Well, if your political goal is to destroy this parliament, you should not be put in charge of managing this parliament, and that's the reason why we apply the cordon sanitaire.
However, the far right considered the cordon sanitaire strategy to be a breach of democracy.
Se il gruppo dei Patriotti è il terzo gruppo per dimensioni all'interno del Parlamento europeo, non l'ho deciso io, ma l'hanno deciso gli elettori. Per cui il fatto di andare contro la volontà degli europei, una volontà che è stata espressa democraticamente da milioni di elettori europei, penso che rappresenti una grossissima assunzione di responsabilità, oltre che una mancanza di rispetto.
With 14 vice presidents up for grabs, 11 were clinched in a first round of voting. 5 were given to the Socialists and Democrats, 3 to the European People's Party, 2 to Renew Europe and 1 to the Greens.
The European Parliament in Strasbourg reopens its doors after 3 months of renovation, taking advantage of the break for the elections. More than half of the 720 MEPs enter Parliament for the first time, and they have a lot to discover about EU institutions, specifically the Parliament. Benedetta Scuderi, elected in Italy for the Greens EFA group, is one of them.
Ero stata al Parlamento di Bruxelles, ma non ero mai stata a quello di Strasburgo. Sono incredibilmente emozionata, sono felicissima di poter iniziare a impegnarmi in questo Parlamento, in questa istituzione. Tra l'altro siamo entrati quando sia stata alzata la bandiera dell'Unione Europea, quindi con l'inno, quindi un'emozione veramente incredibile e la maestosità di questo edificio mi fa capire quanto sia importante il ruolo che dovremmo coprire in questi 5 anni.
Newcomers must first navigate the building, which can be perceived as a labyrinth for some of them. The eve of the first plenary session is dedicated to getting to know the new workplace and new colleagues.
Questa cos'è? Questa è la voting card che mi servirà nei prossimi 5 anni per poter votare all'interno della plenaria.
Their schedule is packed, starting with the election of the President of the Parliament and then the confirmation vote for the President of the European Commission. Scuderi states her priorities.
Verso il giorno stesso. Quindi garantire effettivamente che ci sia una transizione ecologica, garantire effettivamente di raggiungere gli obiettivi e garantire effettivamente che il Green Deal sia sociale.
Scuderi, born in 1991, is one of the youngest faces of the new parliament, in which deputies under the age of 40 represent around a fifth of the total.